Rightio guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a bit of a debrief on one big day. It's been a week since I took off to Raglan on the west coast of the Waikato here and did the one big day adventure ride. It was about 400 kilometers, 10 and a half hours in the saddle I think. Bit more for me. I had an extra hour to get back home from Raglan, and yeah, it was my first adventure ride where we went properly off grid. So I'm not talking just cruising around gravel back roads. We went into farmers tracks, we went onto a beach, we even went through some forestry. It was very varied, and it's taken me a week. I've been sort of thinking about how things went, and I thought I'd share my thoughts on how I think I've learned some stuff from participating in one big day. Right, so the first thing is the Honda Rally and my skill level are still quite similar in terms of what can be achieved. So the Rally did all of one big day, I did all of one big day, but there were definitely places where my skill level and the bike's ability were not in line. My skill level was being the lower part, the bike was actually more capable than my skills were allowing it to be. Part of that was lack of confidence, other parts were just lack of seat time in gnarly conditions like that. I do have all the basics sort of stashed away at the back of my head, but they didn't get to a point where I have them ingrained. Case in point, riding along sort of muddy paths or just really narrow single track and counterweighting. I know that it's a thing I need to do, but it's not something I automatically do at this point. So there's still room for me to grow with the Honda 250 Rally. It did the entire day with very little drama. Yes, I did particularly overheat the clutch at one point, but that is the weak point of the Rally after all. The second thing I took away was you can navigate on a phone, particularly if you've got a good maps app like OSM and Maps, but yeah, there are limitations, particularly in a day where it is literally raining from start to finish. So for me, I was lucky enough to be riding with Andrew on the CRF 300L. He had a Garmin Zumo, I believe it was, which ended up being our primary navigation after both my iPhone 6s, which is my usual navigation phone that sits on top of the nav tower of my Rally, because hey, yeah, I don't want to ruin the camera of my iPhone 11. So yeah, that was my go-to navigation device. And on the descent down to the beach through the Fancy Horse Farm, I noticed that my iPhone 6 wasn't charging. That was because water had managed to travel up the cable and was into the lightning port. So I pulled the thing out, tried to dry as best I could. Neither phone would charge off that cable, which then put me in a bit of a predicament. So the iPhone 6s eventually went flat. I tried to navigate off the iPhone 11, which was my backup, but then of course my rather inexpensive Nelson Rig adventure tank bag has an issue with condensation. So despite having the waterproof poncho on and everything, I could barely see my iPhone 11 for all the condensation inside that, and then my iPhone went flat as well. So yeah, navigation, if you're going to be doing these big rides, if it's something that you're going to do more than once, which is something now I've done one, I definitely want to get in on more. I've put myself on the waiting list for the long way around Lake Taupo. So yeah, investing in something like a good Garmin, something that's waterproof, will charge on your bike, doesn't take up extra ports or anything like that, that would be something I would highly recommend. That was one of the big takeaways for me. Another takeaway for me was, of course, that clutch. So despite upgrading it and having no issues at Burnbuster, which used to be run by the same folks that run One Big Day, I managed to overheat my clutch again, which is sort of reinforcing that that is the weak point of the CRF 250L Rally. So I have the CBR 250R clutch mod, so that is the clutch discs and brand new steel plates, heavy duty springs, all that. Yes, it's made a slight change to the clutch lever feel. It's slightly heavier, but we're talking barely perceptible. But when it counts and when you're in really, really tough conditions like we faced at One Big Day, that gremlin does tend to rear its head. I overheated the clutch at the top of a muddy hill climb, and then I had to traverse through a rather slippery and very tricky forest section with a clutch that was not really working at its best. Luckily, once I got onto the seal again, running at high speed and not slipping the clutch cooled down and came back into good use again. But that was something that's kind of been sitting in the back of my mind ever since getting back, is did I wear the clutch out a bit? Was it just heating up to the point where it was not working as good? Well, I suppose time will tell, but I'd be really disappointed if less than 1,000 Ks in that clutch will be needing replacement again. So yeah, we'll see there. Okay, so another takeaway that was reinforced is riding with riders of a similar skill level on similar spec bikes to you is actually really, really fun. And I was lucky enough to be riding with Andrew for the whole day. Andrew was on a CRF 300L with some tasty mods, including a nice exhaust, redone ECU, etc. And I had a blast riding with someone on a similar spec bike. Andrew set a good pace, so after my navigation all shat the bed, I just followed Andrew with his Garmin. He set a nice pace. There was none of this riding at 10 tenths trying to keep up with your mates or anything like that. It was quite a nice experience. And that sort of brings me on to the last takeaway I had from One Big Day, and that is having a bike that is capable and fun is one thing. Having a bike that has a community around it is entirely different. So One Big Day, the majority of bikes that were taking part in the event were KTMs, and the KTM family really does seem to have a lot of appeal to me. So for me, I grew up as a car guy. I really got into Subarus, and I made some of my best lifeline makes through that, including Ray from MotoNZ.com. So yeah, finding a manufacturer that not only makes the right bike for me in terms of where my skill level is, what I want spec-wise out of a bike, having something with a community is really appealing, and that's where I have really come unstuck in my whole desire for a new bike to replace the Rally. Yes, I can still ride the Rally, and in this tougher stuff it can easily outperform my skill level at times, but I'm wanting more. I'm wanting more than 24 horsepower at the crank. And yeah, one thing that may have come out of One Big Day is actually putting KTMs on my radar seriously, instead of making jokes about them being unreliable and, oh, you're going to join a cult and all that sort of rubbish. Yeah, KTM could potentially be on my radar for my next bike. I've been looking at 390 Adventures since coming back, and yeah, despite the ground clearance and the wheel sizing, if KTM produced a 390 with a 21-inch front wheel, 18-inch rear, slightly better ground clearance, I'd be all over that. But for now, I'm going to stick with the Rally. I'm going to continue my journey trying to become a more proficient adventure rider, and hopefully I'll be doing more rides like One Big Day. So yeah. So thanks for watching. As always, like, subscribe, whatever it is you do to make YouTube pay attention, and share this video around. I'd love to grow the audience bigger, build a community of our own, and I'd love you to be along for the ride. So until the next video, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next ride.